back again with yet another list of digital PlayStation 3 and Vita games worth downloading. In case you don't know, this is my 4th video on this topic. I have 2 other lists with 50 games each, and a 3rd one focused on DLCs featuring other 35 games. With this one, I will have covered 160 games on the PlayStation 3 and Vita, so check those out if you haven't yet. I'll be leaving the links to each one in the description below. It's been a while since I've made one of these. During that time, PlayStation 3 and Vita stores stopped accepting credit card or PayPal or anything like that, but we'll get to that later. First of all, welcome to the channel. This is From the Void. So before we get to the list, let's talk about the more recent change Sony made to the PlayStation 3 and Vita stores. They removed all methods for adding funds to your PSN wallet inside both PlayStation 3 and Vita. Even redeeming codes for funds will not work anymore. So the only option left is to add funds to your PSN account through the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 or PC through Sony's website. It's like I said in a previous video about this. Their fear was that the transaction systems they had on PlayStation 3 and Vita were becoming so old that it would get easier and easier for hackers to invade and steal user informations. So with this change, they removed that risk, but still allowed for players to have a way to purchase games on PlayStation 3 and Vita. I just wanted to address this change if anybody had any doubts about it. Another thing real quick is that although PSP stores are closed for good, as long as PlayStation 3 stores are functional, we can still buy, download and transfer games to the PSP. Yeah, the PSP. I have explained this fully in another video, which I will be also listing in the description and should be popping up in the top right corner right about now. So check that out for the full explanation on buying games for your PSP if you want that, as well as 10 games for that system that are worth playing. Now, I have a great list of games to show you guys today. It's impressive how many interesting titles are there in the PlayStation 3 and Vita stores. However, many of these do not cause a great first impression, okay? Whether because their premise is really weird or because they don't look all that interesting due to budget or childish graphics. So I urge you to cast aside first impressions for this list in particular, because many of these have a lot to offer underneath the surface, however unappealing that surface may be. So with all that said, let's get to the list. Hope you enjoy. Let's talk about 2 glaring omissions from my previous videos on this topic, the Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner titles. There were 2 games on this series released for the PlayStation 2. Let me get ready to say their names. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Haido Kuzunoha vs the Soulless Army, and Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner 2 Haido Kuzunoha vs King Abaddon. Those 2 titles together have 22 words. Alright, so these are spin-offs of the incredibly large Megami Tensei franchise, and they can totally be played even if you have never touched any other Megami Tensei game ever. Actually, to my knowledge, these 2 titles are the only ones to take place in a very different time period. We play as Haido Kuzunoha living in 1920s Japan. He's the chosen devil summoner of his time and must protect humanity from the invading demons as the world grows more and more imbalanced due to humans' actions. It's pretty cool to see a Megami Tensei in this time period, especially because these games feature bustling cities and other locations that are really capable of immersing the player. As for the gameplay, these are full-on action RPGs. There are the usual random encounters, but the battle themselves are action-oriented. You have full control over Haido, but the main feature of these games are the demon summons, of course. Haido can capture demons by finding their weaknesses. Once captured, the demons can be used in battle, and Haido can command them to use magic magic or physical attacks or heal him. One nice feature is that there is a dedicated button to teleport the demon to your side, which is vital in keeping him safe, as its health is almost as important as the main character himself. The story is interesting, although we are once again controlling a silent protagonist, but the other characters do a good job in carrying the story forward, and these games have a really great tone to them, especially if you embrace the unusual but charming art style of their graphics. In any case, these are excellent action RPGs for sure. They go for $9.99 each on PlayStation 3, but only in North America. European PSN accounts won't be able to purchase these titles, unfortunately. But remember, you can simply create a new PSN account in a different region and download the titles. If you are interested in these games, that workaround is a great option because $9.99 is a steal compared to the prices these games command in their original PlayStation 2 physical forms nowadays. The original is going for around $170, while the sequel costs $140. Next is one that I'm sure that you look at and say, nah, I know I did in the past, but I'm so glad I changed my mind and gave it a go, and now you also have the chance to do it because I'll convince you, alright? We are talking about Trash Panic. Okay, the convincing part is later on, alright? Give me just a second to say some important things first. This is a Japan studio game. That should tell you a lot about what to expect here. If you don't know, the now defunct Sony Japan studio was really well known by making some of the most fun games with the craziest, quirkiest and less likely concepts you would expect. This time around, they mixed Tetris with a trash can, and you have no idea how cool of a gameplay concept this is, however unlikely that may sound. You basically have to violently drop rubbish after rubbish in this trash can in such a way to make them destroy each other with the impact so that they occupy less space and you can keep fitting more and more trash in the can. But there's a lot more than that going on in this game, so I'll just narrate the beginning of one stage here to illustrate it the best I can. This is the convincing part, by the way. Ready? Okay. So we're in stage 3 and things are pretty crazy already. So as you can see, they gave me a huge metal bell first, and that's a tough piece to crack. It's pretty sturdy. So instead, I'll use it as means to smash everything else against it, while also causing some chip damage to the metal bell. The tire won't break cause it's rubber, but whatever. Crack that violin, crack that rocking horse. Oh, another tire. Don't worry, we'll handle them later. Okay, a wooden crate. Let's just turn it over and throw some watermelons on the bell for some chip damage, why not? Now crack that crate, another tire. Crack that barrel, crack that barrel, crack that barrel, crack that barrel, crack that barrel. Yeah, feels good. Another tire, whatever. Potato sack is useless, 2 of them. Teddy bear is also useless. And now what we've been waiting for, the candle torch. Ooh, a lit candle torch. Let's fire up this trash can, baby, yeah. No, but what's that? Motainai? What the hell is Motainai? I have no idea actually, but those are valuable, not trash people apparently threw away by mistake. You see, this one is Penguin Mona Lisa or whatever, so we gotta save it. So let's just wait out the fire here. Yeah, there it is. See, the potato sacks and the tires are gone, baby. Burnt. Now just gently drop the Motainai safely, and the little weird dude here is gonna take it away for us. Nice. Meanwhile, let's keep smashing everything against the bell. Oh wait, what? Those barrels had water inside. Well, okay. Now a toilet. Let's flip it over. Oh, it's full of water. Nasty. Smash it against the bell. Let's go. Now see that pink ball there? That's a decomposition ball, alright? That thing feeds on water and slowly decomposes whatever is around it. The more water you give it, the more stuff it will decompose. So let's go. Motorcycle, yeah, let's smash it against the bell. Oh, now the cage is actually cracking, see? Not over yet though. Meanwhile, boom, there goes the whole motorcycle. The decomposition ball is not kidding around. Now another huge bell. What do we do with it? Well, the usual, of course, smash one against the other. Yeah, get that, excellent. The decomposition ball is still going on. It slowly cracks everything around it. Fire extinguisher, rocking horse, smash, 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 marionette. And what? A coffin. Who throws a coffin away? What's going on? Doesn't matter. You don't ask questions in Trash Panic. Just smash. Yeah, get that too. Smash chain excellence. Yeah, baby. Both bells are gone. Whew. Yeah, that's Trash Panic, man. Review over. Go get it for mere $4.99 exclusive to the PlayStation 3 before they take it away and you're sorry you didn't. Following up with a frenetic side-scroller arcade shooter from Devolver Digital that few know about, Luftrausers. For sure, I said the name of the game wrong. Let's just see here for a second.
Luftrausers.
There we go. That's how it's pronounced. Okay, so
Luftrausers
is a minimalistic but beautiful shooter with phenomenal soundtrack and a lot of polish put into its gameplay. Also, there are multiple color palettes to unlock and choose from, which is a nice touch. In its core, it's very arcadey, meaning that there are no stages, just a ludicrous number of challenges to beat tied to each possible aircraft part to be used. By defeating the challenges and achieving high scores, you unlock a wide variety of weapons, body and engine parts to your plane. I enjoy the fact that each part has a different look, and by mixing them you can find some really interesting combinations that affect gameplay a lot. This is a big part of the fun in this game actually, figuring out which other parts to mix with the one you're trying to complete a challenge with. The biggest problem you'll see people having with this game is that a big number of challenges are tied to killing a blimp, but that thing is really hard to get to spawn. You'll have to figure out a way to survive for a long time and get your score really high up while also killing the biggest menaces in the game, like the ace and the battleship, to maximize your chances of getting a blimp to appear, and that's a hard thing to do. But when it does, it's a thrilling spectacle, that blimp. Even after you miraculously destroy it, it still tries to shoot you down while it's falling and sinking in the sea. It's really awesome. I got truly obsessed with this game for a few days, let me tell you. A true testament of how addictive and engaging the gameplay is.
Luftrausers
It's not a perfect game. The sense of progression slows down to a crawl for the later challenges, and there is a lot of frustration to be had here, especially once you unlock SFMT mode, whatever that means, which ramps up the difficulty to such absurd levels that you'll die within seconds several times. But just getting there was a blast. If you are into shooters at all, this is one of the best for sure. It's available on the PlayStation 3 and Vita for $9.99. It's also on Steam for the same price. There is a crazy rare and expensive PC physical version going for $140 currently. In any case, this is a sick game. Do consider getting it. You're hardly regretting it. Next is a treasured hidden gem on the Vita and PSP, Gurumin, a Monstrous Adventure. Before you dismiss this one because it looks childish, let me just say that Gurumin is one of the most surprising games I've ever played. It's so much deeper than it looks, and ultimately a great game, like a 9 out of 10, not even kidding. Go ahead and search online to see several others agreeing to this. As the subtitle states, Gurumin is an adventure, and capital A adventure, really. The sense of discovery and amazement of unfolding what this game has to offer goes beyond my ability to describe it. You play as this young girl who is very spirited, funny, and really a hard ass. She's no pushover. Give this game a chance and you'll see that she's an adorable main character. She's capable of seeing these monster creatures, and there's a whole monster versus phantom war going on that she gets entangled with and will ultimately have to solve. So she goes around with her drill, a very unusual weapon that she uses in several different ways with unlockable abilities and upgrades to defeat phantoms and get some cash. There is a map with several different stages that she unlocks by finding items that the monsters are missing. This game looks like it could have been a shallow adventure game, but it can easily last over 20 hours if you're trying to clear everything, and there's a lot of incentive to replay and unlock loads of new hats and special pictures. And the moment-to-moment gameplay is just great, with lots of exploration, action, and platforming. For instance, the girl is capable of a flying kick ability, which you can combo and double jump, hitting several enemies in a row and reaching new locations. Everything is just great in this game, in my opinion. Give it a go. You can find it for Vita and PSP for $9.99. However, this is unfortunately not available on the European PSN store. It's also available on Steam for the same price. Meanwhile, the physical copies for PSP are trending up at almost $50. Next is Velocity Ultra. If you've seen my video on PlayStation 4 Hidden Gems, which I am now shamelessly promoting, you saw me covering the sequel to this game, Velocity 2X. While 2X is a more complete game because it also includes the side-scroller sections, the original is still a great one, and it was very interesting to play the same formula but now focusing only on the top-down shooter style. If you don't know, these games are all about being fast while finding your way through these multi-connected corridors, surviving against hordes of aliens and rescuing prisoners. Each of the 50 stages available will have objectives to rescue everyone and do it as fast as possible. One great thing that the original has and the sequel doesn't are the stages with very limited timers in which you're supposed to boost the entire way through. These stages are entirely made to allow that type of gameplay, which I enjoyed a lot. There's also a bit more of a focus on combat against the aliens compared to the sequel. Great game here with a very unique spin on the top-down shooter genre. It's available on the PlayStation 3 for $9.99 and on the Vita, where it goes for a little bit cheaper for $7.49, which is the one I have, and it's cool that it has some touch functionalities that may be good for some, although they are completely optional, so don't worry if you dislike these. Velocity Ultra is also available on Steam for $4.99. Hey, been enjoying the list so far? If so, consider subscribing to support the channel. Thank you so much. Moving on to an inspiring puzzle masterpiece, Quell Memento. This is such a relaxing and emotional game wrapped around a simple but engaging head-scratcher gameplay. Everything goes really well together here. The puzzles, the music, the sound effects, which are so satisfying, and even the narrative. Yeah, this has quite a moving story even. The puzzles, although sometimes hard, are always relaxing, and the pacing in which the game evolves feels perfect. They always shake things up with new mechanics like ice cubes and light rays and teleports and all that. The basic structure is pretty simple. You move your blue bubble in straight lines and will only stop when hitting a wall. The objective is to either collect each pearl-looking sphere scattered around or to turn each red or yellow panel to blue, but the way they keep refreshing the challenges with new things and the optional crystals, clocks, and secret exits to optional stages make this game feel like one of the most substantial puzzle games I've ever played. And not because it's super long or has impossible puzzles later on, which are pitfalls that many puzzle games tend to fall into, but rather because you have so much to do during the 6 to 8 hours this game lasts. Quell Memento is a brilliant must-play puzzle game if you're into them at all. It's available for PlayStation 3 and Vita for mere $4.99, which is certainly some of the best $5 I've ever spent. It's also available on Steam and 3DS for $1 cheaper, $3.99, and on the Switch for $7.99 with that Switch taxes. Next up is the excellent Tales from Space series. These two titles are the first ever games developed by Drinkbox Studios, who went on to make more well-known titles such as the two Guacamelee games, Severed, and are currently working on a new title called Nobody Saves the World. Their Tales from Space games, named About a Blob and Mutant Blob's Attack, were also spectacular, introducing a blob as a protagonist who is all about consuming whatever is smaller than it in order to keep getting bigger and bigger and consuming more and more. Very similar to a Katamari game, but it doesn't stick solely to this idea as much as the Katamari games do. Instead, there is a lot of platforming and some very clever puzzle solving wrapped around greatly introduced mechanics that you unlock through the gameplay. In the first one, your blob will have magnetic and electric powers, while on the second one, they introduced some more gimmicks like telekinesis, rocket propulsion, and even gyroscope control levels. The first game is much harder in terms of the requirements to getting a gold trophy in each level, while the second makes things way more streamlined in more compact levels, making it a better and more refined game, but both are excellent. While the second title is available on several different platforms, those being PlayStation 3, Vita, Switch, Steam, and Xbox 360, the original is a PlayStation 3 exclusive. In PlayStation 3 and Vita, both titles go for $7.99 each. However, only the sequel is available in Europe, while the second game is a bit more expensive everywhere else for $9.99. Following up with a fine hidden gem called Crimson Sea 2. This is a third-person action-adventure for the PlayStation 2, with some RPG elements, active battles with both shooting and melee combat, and a pretty epic story and setting. This is pretty much Mass Effect before Mass Effect. I remember having a lot of fun with this back in the day, and booting it up now for capturing this footage brought back a lot of memories. It remains just as fun, as in spirit, the combat in Crimson Sea is a kind of a hack and slash. I remember not following the story cause I never played the original, which is a Xbox Classic exclusive, but that didn't bother me. Now replaying it, I found that you can watch a bunch of the original's main cutscenes, and by talking to NPCs you can pretty much understand what's going on here. But having played the original would certainly improve the appreciation for this game's story a lot. The setting is pretty much Star Wars, with interstellar traveling, intelligent alien life, and dangers of cosmic proportions. Pretty cool game. You can grab it digitally on the PlayStation 3 for $9.99, but not on the European PSN store sadly, while the only other option would be the original PlayStation 2 physical version that is a bit more expensive, going for $30 currently. Now for a demanding PlayStation 3 exclusive that has a lot to offer, Battle Princess of Arcadias. This is one of the games I said many will dismiss in a second because of how it looks, not giving it a chance. But Battle Princess of Arcadia has a demanding but engrossing gameplay like nothing else I've played. You may be thinking it's a simple hack and slash side-scroller, maybe in the veins of Code of Princess or maybe Odin's Sphere, but no, scratch that idea. I mean, sure, it has its typical normal stages where you'll go around killing all monsters very button mashy, but also minding your positioning and switching freely between your main characters, but the main aspect of this game are the boss fights, in which you control your characters and at the same time give commands to a whole squad of over 100 characters present on screen to guide them to defend or attack in order to take a formidable threat down. And let me tell you, this game is hard as hell, especially in these boss fights, and that's why it becomes demanding. There isn't too much room for mistakes here. Your entire army can get wiped out in the blink of an eye if you're unlucky when making a mistake. I'll try to illustrate better. There are loads of informations on screen, but the game actually does a decent job in explaining it all. You see, the boss has a shield that prevents it from taking damage, so you gotta bring the blue shield gauge down first, and for that I find it better to stay away and put your army in defensive mode to withstand the boss's attacks, while you use a ranged character to bring the shield down. When it's almost depleted, switch to a more offensive character like the princess and put your army in attack mode. Then the shield is gone in a second and you can start both causing good damage to the boss while also raising the yellow meter, which is his stun gauge. When it's full, he falls down and won't attack, while you dish out even more damage. That's the basics of how this game works. There's a lot more. It's a whole RPG with leveling up, equipment, upgrades, grinding and everything. But it's also not that long, lasting anywhere between 12 to 18 hours depending on your desire to 100%ing it or not. I think this is a rather unique and awesome side-scroller action RPG, although I don't care too much for the story. But the bigger problem is the price. This game is $19.99 on PlayStation 3 and there is no other versions of it out there. It's a bit overpriced, but if you like action RPGs with a twist, it's totally worth it. Now, a severely overlooked classic from Capcom that deserved so much more recognition than it got, and yet another that I highly suggest you look past the perhaps unappealing graphics to see its true value. Maximo: Ghosts to Glory. This is a modernization for a game done right if I ever saw one. If you don't know, the Maximo series belongs to the Ghosts and Goblins franchise. It pretty much keeps all aspects from the original Ghosts and Goblins, such as the ever-changing geography, enemies with clever patterns, and even the comical factor with your character being stripped down to his underpants when he's close to death, but also modernizes everything that needed it. The controls are much more responsive and there is a wide array of abilities to make use of. You have a very satisfying down thrust when double jumping, you can stab forward, throw your shield, and much more. This goes well with the demanding combat and platforming in this game. This is a tough title, also true to the original. The exploration factor is also excellent. There are so many hidden things to discover in every nook and cranny in this game. I mean, this is a formidable title. A truly well done job from Capcom bringing this franchise into 3D. It's a huge shame that for some reason the Maximo games died off as the series didn't catch on, maybe because of the cartoonish graphics or the fact that it doesn't make it apparent enough that this is a Ghosts and Goblins game. At least it got a sequel in Maximo vs Army of Zin, but that one was not made available digitally, sadly. Actually it was, but only in the European PSN store for some reason. Maximo Ghosts to Glory is $9.99 on PlayStation 3 and it's totally worth it. The PlayStation 2 physical version is also not expensive at all, going for $15 currently. So no excuses for this one, pick it up. Moving on to a really high bang for buck value and the cheapest game on the list, Hydrophobia Prophecy. This is certainly a worthwhile title, especially due to its inexplicable low price. In most aspects, this is a rather standard third-person shooter. In Hydrophobia you will find a lot of exploration, the seemingly mandatory talking to the NPC through the radio, and shooting terrorists. But the setting here is rather interesting and really carries the game a long way. It takes place in a dystopian future where the world is flooded, presumably, so humans are living in floating cities. So of course there had to be terrorists exploding the whole structure, so now you find yourself in a sinking city of metal corridors. The water physics here are really impressive, especially for the time, and they do contribute a lot to the immersion factor. The shooting, although nothing incredible, is surprisingly solid with all the cover mechanics one has grown accustomed to in this type of game. Everything works pretty well, and another highlight would have to be the multiple ways you can interact with the environment to dispose of bad guys. You can hack cameras to spy on their position, you can open doors from a distance and flood the area, and even shoot wires and electrocute bad guys stepping on water. Pretty cool actually. For this game's price, I was expecting much less. It's actually a rather great game. I would give it a 7.5 or 8. It goes for only $1.99 on the PlayStation 3, a steal for the production value here. It's also on Steam and Xbox 360, but for $4.99 in these platforms. Moving on to somewhat of a hidden gem original to the PSP, Gungnir. This is a very satisfying tactical RPG from Sting Entertainment and published by Atlas, so you know it must have some quality at least. It's one of the several games on the Department Heaven series from Sting, among many other Revere titles such as Yggdra Union, Riviera the Promised Land, and Night in the Nightmare. These are all deep tactical RPGs and must-plays for fans of the genre, but Gungnir is the only one available digitally. It's a demanding game even among tactical RPGs, but worth the investment for sure. First of all, I really enjoyed the story in Gungnir. It's a surprisingly immersive and engrossing narrative with very grown-up themes, and it's not afraid to kill off characters and depict cruelty and oppression. Even though they clearly had limitations in terms of resources, I found the presentation really well done here, with several effects and transitions that went a really long way in improving the pacing and keeping me even more interested in a already great story. And the battle mechanics are excellent. It breaks the mold by not applying to the typical turn order for each unit. Instead, you have an overall turn where you can command any of your units once, then in the next turn you can pick that character again or whichever in whatever order you desire. This gives a lot more freedom, but also makes it much more difficult to decide what to do. There are several other mechanisms setting this game apart as well, such as the tactical points, which you can use for several different commands. The most important being the beat functionality, where you can have multiple allies attack the same unit at once in a single turn. Tactics points can be replenished by conquering bases in the battle screen, so positioning is even more important in Gungnir. Verticality is also a big concern in this game, as there is fall damage and it affects your weapon's reach as well. It's a very deep but engaging battle mechanic if you like these types of games. There's a problem though, the price. Gungnir goes for $19.99 on Vita or PSP, but it's still a better option than the physical PSP version, which is the only other legit option you have, that is currently going for over $60. Following up with a very unusual couple of games, the Joe Danger series. Okay, I don't think I've ever played anything like Joe Danger before. Joe is a stuntman, and going fast while doing all sorts of crazy maneuvers is just his day job. The gameplay here is quite interesting, although it takes some time to get used to. But it really pays off, as if you manage to do all the stuff the game wants you to, you'll be feeling quite good about it, no doubt. You press R1 to go forward, while L1 will go backwards. Holding square makes Joe duck, and releasing it makes him jump. Circle and triangle are used for tricks, and the analog stick will be required sometimes to change lanes when some obstacle is approaching. It's quite a lot to take in, but once you do, it's very cool to see all the crazy stuff that happens. There are loads of secrets in this game, and they'll shake things up by putting you in all sorts of different vehicles, with some changing the gameplay significantly, like the jetpack. These games are loads of fun, clearly made with a lot of care. They are available on the PlayStation 3 and Vita. On the PS3, they go for quite hefty prices, $14.99 each, while they're a bit less expensive on the Vita for $10.99 each. They're also available on Steam and Xbox for $14.99 as well. Following up with hallucinogenic trip, Dyad. I've been playing a number of psychedelic games in recent times and I keep getting impressed by them, and Dyad was no exception. This is such a trippy game. You rotate around this tunnel trying to align your grab reach with the glowing spheres. Once you do, you can grab them, but you always have to get them in couples of the same color in order to get them to count and for you to get a speed boost. The objectives are varied. You may have to grab a number of couples within a time limit, or finish the stage as fast as possible like a racing game, and many others. Then they introduced the graze and lance mechanic. Once you grab a sphere, it will display its graze radius around it. You have to pass through the radius without hitting the sphere itself in order to fill your lance meter. Once it's full, you can manually use a lance that will give you a longer boost, and while it's lasting, you are encouraged to pass through as many spheres as possible. All this together makes playing this game a blast. Very hypnotic and challenging without getting too demanding, unless you want to go for the trophy stages, which are crazy hard. Awesome game, Dyad, but surely not for the faint of heart or anyone with photosensitivity though. It's available on the PlayStation 3 for $14.99, kinda steep price, and it's also on Steam for the same price. Now for another game that you will look at and feel that cruel urge to dismiss it because it looks childish. But that would be a travesty, I say. Huge travesty. Let's take a look at The Adventures of Cookie and Cream. This is a truly unique and unconventional PlayStation 2 title that has two completely different and valuable appeals to it. If you want to play this game in single player, it provides a really interesting challenge unavailable anywhere else, while it can also be a whole lot of fun in two players couch co-op with guaranteed laughter. This game is always in a vertical split screen situation. Left side is brown bunny Cookie and right is pink bunny Cream. And in single player you control both bunnies at the same time. Each analog stick controls one of them, and to jump you use L1 or R1 respectively, while R2 and L2 will be context sensitive action buttons to turn a crank or bang on a gong bell, for instance, and they will force you to actually move them at the same time. Because if one lag's behind, the camera stops for the other one as well, and if it remains idle for longer, a very annoying enemy will start chasing it around and causing damage, which actually translates to a fast reduction of the timer count. The time is the equivalent of your life here. Dropping into holes or water will take a big chunk of time away. Meanwhile, scattered around will be clocks to increase your remaining time, and a special hidden puzzle piece for each stage as well. So needless to say, this will be a daunting task on your brain, having to do one thing with the right hand and a completely different thing with the left hand is really difficult, especially in later stages. But this is the only game that does this in this particular platforming focused way to my recollection, and it's a really cool and addictive gameplay. Figuring out what to do with one of the bunnies to open the way to the other one is always challenging in creative ways too. Kudos to the developers behind it. By the way, you're not gonna believe this, The Adventures of Cookies and Cream is a From Software title. This blew my mind. Anyway, this is a great game for sure and really deserved more recognition. I guess it's a really tough concept itself, but do check it out. It's on the PlayStation 3 for $9.99, but only in North American PSN stores. This is sadly not available in Europe, while the PlayStation 2 physical is also an option if you prefer, as it's one of the few games that didn't spike too much with the pandemic. It's going for $18 right now. This game was ported to the DS, by the way, as well, and it's also going for around $18. looks, but the gameplay is rather different. Each bunny will be placed on one of the screens, and the bottom one will be controlled with a stylus, so it's a rather different gameplay. Next is certainly the most humble game on the list, Archibald's Adventures. I always like to include at least one really low-key game on the list. I know this is not going to blow you away or anything, but I really like to give some praise to the small teams with really limited resources that were able to create fun games, and in this case all the way back in 2008 with far less advanced tools than one would have available now. So kudos to the Raking Grass team for creating this original PSP Minis title that is humble in every single way, but it's still a great puzzle platformer, among the best head scratchers with some unique mechanisms. It starts off really simple. You control teenager in trouble Archibald. He has no moves, no attack, nothing. He can only climb 1 square tall blocks and go faster with his skateboard to jump larger gaps. But throughout the surprisingly long story, he unlocks a few other gadgets that really change up the gameplay. The first will be the special chewing gum that creates this pink bubble that can press switches and even carry boxes from a distance. And then he finds a service pod that has magnetic capabilities and can even attach itself to the ceiling by using a telescopic magnet. It becomes a really interesting puzzle platformer, and some stages will really make you scratch your head. The drawback is the obvious one. There isn't a lot of action in Archibald's Adventure. Those looking for a fast-paced gameplay will get bored really quickly here. But if you're into puzzle platformers, this is a fine title, no doubt. It's available for the PlayStation 3, Vita and PSP for mere $3.99, while other options will be Steam and mobile for $4.99. Next up is Supermagical. This is a quirky little bust-a-move or puzzle bobble clone that does more than enough to justify its existence. First of all, it's on the Vita and it uses touch functionality very well, and this is coming from someone that dislikes touch controls almost entirely. But Supermagical not only does them well, but they actually convinced me that in this particular type of gameplay, the bust-a-move genre, it's actually better than regular button and analog stick controls. Second of all, it has plenty of extra stuff on top of the regular puzzle bobble gameplay, such as having helpers to aid you with some powerful spells to counter the several change-ups to the formula that the enemies will come up with, and a workshop where you mix ingredients to create items and other stuff, which is all pretty cool actually. I really enjoyed my time with this game, and if you like bust-a-move titles, you really can't go wrong with Supermagical. It's available on the Vita for $4.99, not a steep price at all, and on Steam for the same price, but I have no idea how it plays there without the touch functionality, probably way worse than the Vita version. Now for an absolute mind-boggler classic from Sony Japan Studio, who else? Echochrome. This is a PSP puzzle platformer that I believe was the first of its kind. It paved the way for more well-known titles such as the Monument Valley series, but it still stands tall as the most deep title in this type of game as far as I know. It's such an interesting gameplay, especially if you never played anything like it before. You basically can warp reality in 5 different ways through the magic of perspective shifting. Platforms in different planes that touch each other in the right way will create an impossible path. That's perspective traveling. There's also perspective landing and perspective jump, where your character can land on any platform that looks to be below a hole or that looks to be above in a jump. But my favorites are perspective existence and absence. If you place a platform in front of a gap between 2 paths that would otherwise connect, they now do connect. That's perspective existence. And if you do the same in front of an obstacle like a hole, it stops existing. That's perspective absence. It's almost poetic. The presentation is also great in Echochrome. It has a monochromatic, minimalistic look that works really well with the gameplay, especially when accompanied by the classical music to stimulate your lazy brain. There are 56 stages in Atelier mode, and you can create your own in Portfolio mode and even download more via DLC. Loads of content here, much more than you would get in both Monument Valley games combined. Echochrome is available for PlayStation 3, Vita and PSP. The PlayStation 3 version is $9.99, while the Vita and PSP versions are $7.99. There's also a physical version of Echochrome for the PSP, but it's only in Europe. But that's okay since the PSP is region free. It's not expensive at all, going for less than 10 bucks. This next one is only for hardcore tactical RPG fans, alright? If you're not even curious about strategy RPGs, go ahead and move on to the next game. This is Blazing Souls Accelate. Okay, everything is bad about this game, okay? I know that, and if you've played it, you know it too. There is a stupid search mechanism to find new areas on the map that require you to spend currency and do blind searches, which is the worst idea ever. The story is whatever. The main character is just a ginormous douchebag all the time. It's really annoying. And the presentation is barely serviceable, and only if you really appreciate this style of pixel art. Also, the pace of this game is tedious even for RPG veterans. So yeah, I know, I am not painting a pretty picture here. However, the one thing that tactical RPG fans will appreciate the most is the only redeeming factor of Blazing Souls: the battle system. It's pretty awesome, but again, only if you're a dedicated player, because it's also a convoluted mess. There is a combo mechanism where for some reason you need to press the right button at the correct menu box to be able to use, that allows you to link up a bunch of attacks together and do massive damage, which feels awesome. But first, it's weird that they kinda hide it behind a specific button press and not a option in the menu. And second, even though right now I'm doing some pretty cool stuff on screen, it doesn't really look like much because the presentation is kinda underwhelming. There's also a charge and unleash system that allows for multiple party members to combo attacks together, but it's also a pain to get the hang of. So again, only for big tactics fans, Blazing Souls Accelate has a pretty cool battle system that I think it's worth a look, and that's why I'm including it here. It's available on the Vita and PSP for $9.99, but not on the European PSN store, sadly, as well as a PSP physical copy that goes for over 30 bucks right now. Moving on to an excellent beat-em-up compilation from Capcom, Dungeons & Dragons Chronicles of Mystara. During the PlayStation 3 era, beat-em-up titles were a rare sight, but in 2013, Capcom decided to port over two great arcade games from the 90s, both based on the Dungeons & Dragons franchise, and both excellent: Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mystara. First of all, I gotta say that the game starts with Shadow over Mystara already selected. If you want to play Tower of Doom, you'll have to press select in the main menu. It's a bit weird, but other than that, the ports are excellent, bringing over both games faithfully and adding extra features such as improved, sharper graphics, and especially the extra rules you can opt to include that add a welcome replay value. The gameplay is solid, responsive, and full of moves to learn how to use that are completely different between each of the several different characters you can choose, including some powerful magicians and the mighty dwarf that packs some whopping damage with his axe. Great beat 'em up gameplay in both games for sure, and they look incredible too. It really gave me some Marvel vs. Capcom 2 vibes. Must be some of the same artists that worked on this. If you are into beat 'em ups, and especially if you have friends to play this with, do yourself a favor and get these two excellent Capcom classics. Chronicles of Mystara is a bit on the expensive side for $14.99 for the PlayStation 3, but remember, it includes two games. It goes for the same price on Steam, Xbox 360 and Wii U as well. Now, Karateka. This is a remake of the 1984 title of the same name that really didn't try to do anything besides the new graphics and a solid timed input gameplay that is rather enjoyable for the time it lasts. This is one of the simplest games ever, probably. You start off with the main character climbing up the mountain to save his kidnapped girlfriend from the hands of evil Akuma. On the way there, you will meet dozens of foes on one-to-one, fist-to-fist combat. It's always the same thing. Pay close attention to the enemies and the musical cues to determine how many moves they will try to hit you with, and press the guard button in the correct timing. Button mashing will surely lead to defeat. If you correctly defend, you'll get a chance to input some hits on the enemy yourself, then pretty much rinse and repeat for the entire game with increasing difficulty, and there you have it. That's Karateka. One thing I thought was a good idea is how they handle lives in this game. If you are defeated as the main character, you move on to the monk guy, and if he falls, then the brute guy takes his place, and the ending will get worse and worse the more you are defeated. I like this game, just don't go expecting anything else than what you're seeing, and you may have a good time too. It goes for $4.99 on the PlayStation 3, and it's also available on the Xbox 360 for the same price. And with that, we conclude the 25 games for today's list. Hope you found some of them interesting or got some entertainment out of this. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing for more content as I am expanding the scope of the channel. I'm now doing reviews. I'll be making a Game of the Year video soon, focusing on indies and lesser known games, so help me out in making this channel more sustainable by subscribing. It would mean the world to me. In any case, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.